Hi everyone, and welcome to our second video cast for the abnormal psych unit. Today we're going to be talking about two types of disorders specifically, somatoform and dissociative. Okay, so let's get started. The first category is somatoform disorders, and I talked about this a little bit when we were looking at the case studies of what is abnormal, and we talked about, I believe it was Bob, who was suffering from nausea and other things, but with no physical reason. There wasn't any physiological or body problem. So somatoform disorders are a psychological disorder where the symptoms take a bodily, that's why it's called somatic, because the soma it's Latin for body. They take a bodily form with no physical cause. So it would be like if you went blind, but your eyes worked fine, occipital lobe fine, no damage, retina, optical nerve, anything at all, right? This is not the same as a psychosomatic disorder. So that would be like if I was really, really stressed and got heart disease, right? Because those are actual illnesses. Like your heart at that point, like you really do have high cholesterol or whatever. It's an actual physical illness that has physical signs caused by a mental or psychological factor, right? And somatoform disorders are actually really rare. They're only about 2% of mental illness. So that it's not that you find them all the time, or it's something that you see every day, but they do exist, depending a little bit on genetics and a little bit on environment, just like most other things, right? So, a couple different types of somatoform disorders we're going to cover is conversion, pain, body dysmorphic, and hypochondriasis, or someone who's a hypochondriac, right? So conversion disorder, right? It's a severe physical disorder which there is no medical explanation. So it's usually something, it's not like, oh, I have a headache, usually. It's something like I'm paralyzed or I'm blind or, something more intense. And it's often accompanied by kind of a patient being like, yeah. They're not really too overly concerned with the problem. And sometimes it actually occurs with things that are not medically possible. So it'll be like partial paralysis or things that won't work that are not connected in the brain. So there's physical symptoms that are not actually possible. And it can, like I talked about before, include vision problems, so partial and complete blindness, tunnel vision. And what's interesting is that these people are not faking, but they actually do display sometimes, so if they're paralyzed, they might sleepwalk. Or if they're saying that they're deaf or they're blind, they might still use those senses to attend to stimuli, but they're not faking. It's like their brain doesn't allow them to know that they can use those things. It's very interesting. Okay. The next one is pain disorder, and it's kind of just like it sounds, right? A person experiences pain that causes significant distress and impairment, but there's no reason the pain is there. So it's like conversion, except it's specifically focused on pain. Body dysmorphic disorder is usually, a lot of times people talk about this when they talk about anorexia or bulimia, because it has to do with an imagined defect in appearance. So it's something that they become preoccupied with that's either imagined or exaggerated, and like facial wrinkles or facial hair, size or shape of nose, muscles, any kind of thing. And they often have frequent plastic surgeon consultations. They want to change all the time. There's a case that comes to mind. She's like the human Barbie or whatever, and I think she's had 50 plus surgeries in order to make her body the way that she wants, right? So she's never really happy with exactly what the way that her body looks. And then the last one is a hypochondriasis, right? We call it someone, they are a hypochondriac, is what we say kind of, in the outside world, right? And a mental disorder that involves fear of developing a serious illness, right? And you interpret any sort of physical symptom as a serious medical disease. And hypochondriasis, kind of overlaps with anxiety disorders in that it does involve excessive worry about medical concerns, but it's placed in the somatoform category because it mostly has to do with the bodily form. All right, so a couple of different disorders that also involve illness, and maybe a lot of you guys have heard of this before because they showed it in movies. This picture over here is from The Sixth Sense. It's called fictitious disorder, also known as Munchausen syndrome, and this is where a person deliberately produces or pretends or exaggerates symptoms in order to get sympathy, nurturance, and attention. It can come from a lot of different reasons. They may have grown up with someone who they saw get the attention, but they don't actually have anything wrong. So that's what separates them, is that they don't have anything wrong and they're faking it. Or sometimes they'll actually give themselves something wrong, but it's still fake. It's created, right? Another, way that this is talked about sometimes is called fictitious disorder by proxy, or Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And this is when you make someone else sick, like a child. And this is actually not in the DSM because it's not recognized as a disorder, but actually a physical or psychological abuse. And it's the type of situation where you would call and report this to the authorities because for child abuse. And it's not a somatoform disorder. So the fictitious disorder, which we do, is in the DSM, we do not consider a somatoform disorder because people with somatoform disorder are not trying to deceive you. They really have the symptoms, even though the symptoms are not physically there. Like they think they're there, but they're not trying to deceive you. So that's a major difference. Okay, next category is dissociative. The next category is dissociative disorders, also called psychogenic. And dissociative disorders are a category where the person dissociates or separates themselves from another aspect of themselves in order to protect something that's going on. And it's kind of like the person's mind, is separated. And almost like if you think about hypnosis, where they talked about like the hidden observer, and there's the part of you that knew what was going on and the part of you that didn't. So it's kind of like that, but obviously a little bit more intense and more, persistent than hypnosis. So there's dissociative amnesia, dissociative fugue, and dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder, or MPD. So dissociative or psychogenic amnesia is a type of amnesia where you're unable to recall the information, often caused by a stressful situation. It's too extensive to be explained by normal forgetfulness, so it's not just like, oh, they forgot so-and-so's name. It can last several hours or years, and it often leads to forgetting people and events, but not the ability to talk and reason. So it's that semantic and episodic, not the procedural, okay? And this is not, the reason it's different than regular amnesia is because when you talk about amnesia, normally it's caused by some sort of brain trauma. So an example would be like, 50 First Dates, or there's that movie with Rachel McAdams, The Vow, right, where she gets in a car accident. So there's some sort of like reason why this person has amnesia. And in this case, there's no physical reason, that no car accident, no trauma that's to the brain that's caused it. So it comes on kind of out of nowhere, but is the same as amnesia. So it's called dissociative. They're actually splitting from, splitting the part of them that's stressed out or from who they really are, and they forget all that information. It's kind of like repression, maybe, if you would think about the idea, like that's what Freud would call it, even though we don't call it that today. Dissociative fugue is a special type of amnesia that includes travel. So while they have the amnesia, they forget, episodes or parts of their life. They, it happens kind of acutely, like out of nowhere, usually a stressful situation. Then what's added on for fugue is the travel. So they tend to either travel somewhere or change the location, and they end up and they don't know who they are. And there's been cases where people will adopt a whole new identity, so a new name, new home, new job, whatever. And there's also been cases of people who are found and they're just like random, like Jane Does or John X's or whatever at hospitals or places because they don't know who they are until friends and family can come, and then they don't recognize them, but at least then they're named, right? And recovery, they don't know when it's going to happen. It could be months, it could be years, and when recovery is complete, they might not even remember what happened during the fugue. So if they were in the fugue for a couple of months, they're not going to remember what happened during the fugue when they come out of it. And last is dissociative identity disorder. And this, I think, is like the most controversial of disorders because it's the idea that people actually have two or more distinct personalities that kind of dominate their body at a particular time. And these personalities have different names, different genders, different ethnicities, different religions, different voices, different handwriting. They have the full personality, right? And sometimes like certain environmental things will change it, but not always. So sometimes one personality will just come out. Other times I've read a story where if the personality needed to come out for some reason, it would come out then. But it's not always a particular environmental cue. They can't predict which one will be dominant for any time. Like they kind of switch. And sometimes you have one that's like the lead alter that kind of controls all the other alters. That's what the personalities are called, as alters. And they have found that it's most likely something that results in severe childhood trauma. So repeated sexual abuse, or something where you actually create different personalities in order to escape your everyday life. And the personalities that live through certain awful things actually get hidden away from you and you really don't remember them. It's very rare. That's all for now, AP Psychos, and remember, psychology is flippin' awesome.